I never thought I'd be the one sitting here, typing this out for the world to see. But I have to know. Was I wrong for finally walking away? Or did I just do what I had to do to survive a family that treated me like a ghost? My father literally handed the keys to my future over to my brother while I was standing right there, holding the honors degree he never bothered to acknowledge, and he didn't even blink when he told me I was expected to understand. He prioritized a son who has never worked a day in his life over a daughter who sacrificed everything to keep the family name respectable. And honestly, I need you to tell me, would you have stayed and kept fighting for a love that clearly wasn't there? Or would you have burned the bridge behind you just like I did? Growing up, I always knew there was a difference, but I tried to convince myself it was just in my head. My brother, Leo, is 2 years younger than me. And from the second he was born, it was like the sun rose and set specifically for him. I remember my 10th birthday vividly, because it was the day I realized I was a second-class citizen in my own home. I had asked for a specific set of art supplies for months, saving up my own chores money just to show my dad I was serious about it. When the day came, my dad walked in with a massive box, and my heart soared. But when I opened it, it was a high-end remote-controlled car. I looked at him, confused, and he just patted Leo on the head and said, "I figured you could share it with your brother. He's been wanting one of these." I didn't even like cars. Leo played with it for 10 minutes, broke the antenna, and left it in the dirt, while I sat in my room wondering why my one day of the year had to be about him too. As we got older, the gap only widened. I was the straight-A student, the one who never missed a curfew, the one who took up a part-time job at 16, so I wouldn't have to ask for gas money. Leo, on the other hand, was the golden boy who could do no wrong. He crashed the car my dad bought him 3 weeks after getting his license, and my dad's response wasn't a lecture or a grounding. It was a brand new SUV because the old one wasn't safe enough. I spent my entire high school career trying to earn a single, "I'm proud of you," that wasn't followed by a comment about how Leo's football game went or how Leo needed help with his math homework. I became the invisible pillar of the house, the one who handled the chores, cooked when my mom was tired, and kept my grades high enough to earn a full-ride scholarship to university, because I knew deep down that there was no college fund waiting for me. There were so many nights I stayed up until 3 a.m. studying by the light of a desk lamp, making sure my GPA was perfect because I knew that if I slipped even once, there would be no safety net. Meanwhile, I could hear Leo in the next room laughing with his friends over headsets, playing video games until dawn. My father would walk past my room, see me working, and say nothing. But if Leo won a match in his game, my father would be right there, cheering him on like he'd just won the Super Bowl. It wasn't just about the money or the things, it was about the oxygen in the room. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene at the party. I just nodded, walked back into the room, grabbed my purse and left. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment with a bottle of wine and a laptop. I realized that for years, I had been the only thing keeping that company from an audit or a total collapse. I had all the passwords. I had the relationships with the vendors. I had the personal cell numbers of every major client. And more importantly, I had the legal power of attorney over certain accounts that my dad had signed over to me years ago because he was too lazy to do the paperwork himself. My father had been so confident in my loyalty that he had handed me the very tools I needed to dismantle his world. He assumed that because I was just a girl, I wouldn't have the stomach for a fight. He forgot that he was the one who taught me how to win. The next morning, I didn't go into the office. I went to a lawyer. I spent 6 hours going through every contract, every email, and every scrap of paper I'd saved over the years. I found out that because of the way the investment in my inheritance had been structured in my employment contract, something I had actually written myself and he had signed without reading because he trusted me to handle the boring stuff, I was entitled to a massive buyout if I was ever passed over for a leadership role I had been promised in writing. And I had the emails to prove those promises. Dozens of them. "You'll be the boss one day. This company will be yours. I'm building this for you." I also discovered that my father had been dipping into company funds for Leo's personal debts in a way that wasn't exactly legal under our corporate structure. I had the leverage, the law, and the lack of remorse. But I didn't stop there. I called our 3 biggest clients. People who only stayed with us because they trusted me personally. These were people whose weddings I'd attended, whose kids' names I knew. I told them I was leaving to start my own firm, and that I would be taking a sabbatical first. I didn't even have to ask them to come with me. Two of them immediately told me they were pulling their contracts because they didn't trust Leo or my dad to manage their projects without me. They knew Leo's reputation. They knew he was a liability. By noon, the company had lost 40% of its projected revenue for the next fiscal year. I felt a strange sense of peace as I watched the emails come in, notifying the main office of the contract cancellations. It wasn't spite, it was gravity. A company built on a lie cannot stand when the truth walks out the door. Within 48 hours, the company was in a tailspin. My dad called me 40 times. When I finally picked up, he was screaming, "What did you do? The banks are calling about the line of credit. The Miller project just canceled. They said they only deal with you. Get down here right now and fix this." I sat back in my chair, looking out the window, and told him very calmly, "Dad, I'm just a girl, remember? I'm busy looking for a husband to take care of me. I'm sure the president of the company can handle a few phone calls. Why don't you ask Leo to fix the bank situation? He's the man of the house now. Maybe he can trade his high score in Call of Duty for an extension on the loan." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I then informed him that my lawyer would be sending over the paperwork for my mandatory buyout, a sum that would effectively drain the company's liquid cash reserves. He gasped, telling me I was destroying his life's work. I told him he had destroyed it the moment he decided my hard work was worth less than my brother's existence. He called me ungrateful. He called me a traitor. He told me I'd never be welcome in his home again. I told him that was fine because I'd never felt welcome there anyway. I had been a guest who was expected to pay for her stay with her life's blood. The aftermath was even more brutal than I expected. Without my oversight, Leo tried to manage a major site. He ignored the environmental reports I'd left on his desk, and he ended up violating 3 different safety codes within the first week, resulting in a massive fine and a stop work order. He tried to bully the inspectors, which only made things worse. The company's reputation tanked overnight. Subcontractors stopped showing up because they hadn't been paid. Since Leo didn't know how to authorize the digital payments I'd always handled, and had instead spent the payroll money on a customized racing setup for his room, my dad had to sell the SUV he bought Leo, and eventually had to downsize the family home just to keep the business from going bankrupt. He was forced to come out of retirement, working 12-hour days at 66 years old, doing the job I used to do for free. The local business community was buzzing with the scandal. I heard through the grapevine that my father was seen crying in a board meeting when a longtime partner told him he was a fool for letting the real talent walk away. Leo, true to form, didn't even try to help. He blamed the stress for his lack of performance and eventually just stopped coming in altogether, spending his days at a bar, telling anyone who would listen how I robbed him of his future. My father, broken and desperate, even sent me a letter through his lawyer, asking for a loan. I didn't even open it. I sent it back marked "Return to sender. No husband found yet." My mom tried to guilt-trip me, calling me every day, saying family stays together, and you're killing your father's heart. I asked her where she was all those years when I was being pushed into the shadows. I asked her why she never stood up for me when I was being treated like a maid and a bookkeeper. I asked her if she remembered my 10th birthday and the remote-controlled car. She had no answer. She just cried and said I was being difficult and too sensitive. I realized then that their version of family was just a hierarchy where I was at the bottom, and they were only upset because I'd finally stopped holding the ladder for them. They didn't miss me. They missed the convenience I provided. I used my buyout money to move to a different city and start my own consultancy firm. It was hard, and there were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I was too cruel. I'd see photos of my dad looking exhausted on social media, his hair turning gray almost overnight, or hear about Leo struggling to find work, and a part of me would want to go back and fix it. I'd imagine walking back into that office, taking the reins, and making everything okay again. But then I'd remember the look on my dad's face at that banquet, the absolute dismissal in his eyes. I'd remember the art supplies that were given to Leo. I'd remember the years of being a ghost. And my heart would turn back to stone. I realized that mercy for them was just another form of self-sabotage for me. Oh day, my firm is thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I have a team of 12 people who respect me, and I never have to prove my worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. We handle some of the biggest land development projects in the state. I pay my employees what they're worth, and I don't care about their gender. I care about their results, their integrity, and their drive. My dad and I haven't spoken in over a year. Last I heard, the family company finally folded and was sold for pennies on the dollar to a competitor who immediately fired the remaining staff. Leo is working a retail job at a mall because he has no skills and no work ethic, and my dad is living in a small apartment, still blaming everyone but himself. He tells people I stole his company, but the truth is I just took back the value I had been giving him for free. He still sends the occasional text on my birthday, usually asking for money or complaining about his health. I don't reply. Not because I'm mean, but because there's nothing left to say. The girl who wanted his love is dead, and the woman who replaced her is too busy building her own empire to worry about the ruins of his. I've learned that sometimes, the only way to win is to stop playing the game entirely. I found my own man of the house, and it turned out to be me. I don't need a husband to take care of me, and I certainly don't need a father who only sees me as a tool. I realized that you can't fix a family that doesn't think anything is broken, and you can't light yourself on fire just to keep people warm who wouldn't even offer you a blanket in the rain. I stopped being the good daughter and started being the successful woman, and I've never been happier. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the first time I ever truly stood up for myself. I learned that loyalty is a two-way street, and if someone isn't willing to walk toward you, you shouldn't be running toward them. If they want to treat you like a ghost, eventually, you have to disappear and haunt someone else's success, namely your own. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt like the invisible child in your family, please like this video to show your support. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know I'm not alone in this struggle for recognition. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far by draining the cash reserves and letting the company fail? Or was that just the price of my unpaid labor finally coming due? Would you have helped them one last time? Or would you have let it burn like I did? Is there a point where family stops being a reason to stay and starts being a reason to leave? Subscribe for more stories like this where we dive into the messy reality of family, betrayal, and the sweet taste of justice. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting the channel through this long journey. I'll see you all in the next story.